A very good day to you. I hope you're having yourself very good day to you. I hope you're having yourself an amazing Monday night, Monday morning, depending on where you're watching from. This is the Black Hot Fire updates with me, Dimori. Of course, I'm here to tell you about each and everything that was happening throughout the weekend, what was hitting the headlines in Africa, in all the corners of Africa. What theatrics are we being served over the weekend? So we're gonna be looking at each and everything that was making the headlines in Africa. Of course, from Zimbabwe, we're gonna be looking at Guinea. We're gonna be looking at Sudan, where in Sudan, fightings have escalated, really escalated. Sudan has been in a state of war, but over the last 2 weeks, the fighting has escalated between Sudan's military and a paramilitary group, especially in Darfur. So I'm going to be telling you about how more than 100 people have died in the past 1 week, and more than 1,000 others injured after fightings in Sudan have escalated. I'm going to be telling you about Papua New Guinea, where even worse news is that in New Guinea, landslide buried over 2,000 people over the weekend. 2,000 is the number of people that were buried in New Guinea from a landslide. So I'm going to be telling you about that. I'm going to be telling you about how Burkina Faso's ruling junta, I know Kid does not like it being called a junta. Burkina Faso's ruling government ended its transition term by 5 years. So what that means is Burkina Faso will have Traore as its president for the next 5 years. That's good news. This comes a few days after, of course, he deducted the salary of every politician by 30% and increased the salary of every every worker in Burkina Faso by 50%. So I'm going to be telling you about that. We're going to be looking at Ghana, which was out there trying to restructure its 5.4 billion debt. It's having a 5.4 billion debt. That's why it was going down the drain. But it has been trying as much as it can to negotiate with the IMF. That is after the IMF bailed it out. It bailed it out with a 3 billion bailout, making its total debt now to be 5.4. It has a debt of 5.4 billion. So it was out there trying to sign an MOU. An MOU is a memoranda of association, trying to restructure its debt because it's really deep in debt, as are many other African countries. So we're going to be looking at that. We're also going to be looking at Niger and Mali, especially Mali, where the Malian government is not joking. It indeed jailed a professor for criticizing the junta. So in Mali, the Malian government is not joking with anybody. So there was an academician who was jailed for criticizing the government. I'm going to be telling you about that. And of course, Mozambique, we're going to be looking at Mozambique too, which is going through a problem similar to the one Kenya was going through, where doctors are on strike in Mozambique and hundreds of people are dying every day because health workers are striking for what they're saying. They face dire conditions every day as they work. So we're going to be looking at that and, of course, everything else that was making the headlines in Africa. I hope you had yourself an amazing weekend. Mine was amazing. It was a good weekend, so I hope you also had yourself a good weekend. We were here on Saturday with Keith. We were talking about the flower of life and Terence Howard and his perception of the flower of life and the arithmetic. It was such a nice show. If you did not watch that show, you can go check it out on YouTube. It was titled The Terence Howard and the Flower of Life. It was an amazing show. Keith taught us a lot of things, especially on the same African spirituality, and you can go check it out. So let us start by looking at the Zimbabwean ZIG, which is our main focus of the day. So Zimbabwe launched a new currency. And when I say a new currency, you might think that it's not a new thing in Zimbabwe. It's in fact, its sixth currency in 15 years. Sixth currency in 15 years. So that is 2 years per currency. So it launched a new currency. It's called the ZIG. ZIG means Zimbabwe gold. It is a currency that is allegedly, they claim that they backed it up with gold, and therefore it cannot it cannot fail because it's backed by gold. So, however, one, for a currency to work, it needs to be acceptable by the people. However, so far this has not been the case in Zimbabwe. The popularity of the ZiG is really low, and it is understandable because when a country has had 6 national currency in 15 years, then you don't even trust the one that is currently there to last another 2 years, And money being a store of value, it means that if this currency fails, when I have money worth 1 million Zimbabwean zigs, then I'll have lost my 1 million Zimbabwean zigs. So that is why it is very, very unpopular in Zimbabwe so far, to a point that they had to pay a reggae musician by the name Zigmari to sing for it. So they had to release a song. They paid the musician 2,000 USD and a car to release a song praising the Zig, just to try and make it popular among the people of Zimbabwe, because ironically the people of Zimbabwe have refused to use the Zig. Nobody wants it. President Emmerson Mnangagwa is still urging Zimbabweans. He was actually of the thought that they should stop having more dollars in Zimbabwe, because with more dollars it means people now are not have an alternative. However, traders in Zimbabwe have resorted to repairing old US dollar notes instead of using the ZiG. So there are people in the streets right now in Zimbabwe, I can share a video, who are repairing old US dollar notes because the Zimbabwean government is making it hard for new US dollar notes to enter into circulation because they want people to use the ZiG, but people are preferring to repair. If you have a worn out dollar, you can take it to the streets and it gets fixed. People are preferring that over using their ZiG, which, as I said, is understandable considering when it's the 6th currency you are using in how many years? In 15 years. That's a currency every 2 years. Then I would also not really put a lot of trust in that currency, because what are the chances that this one will also fail? So this is a video of people
Traders in Zimbabwe have resorted to repairing old US dollar notes for desperate
repairing old US dollar notes, putting glue on them to use them because they do not want anything to do with the ZiG. Even though
customers.
pardon my Wi-Fi, it's really, really low.
Fresh new US dollar currency. Traders in Zimbabwe have resorted to repairing old US dollar notes for desperate customers. Fresh new US dollar currency is not coming into the Southern African nation, and so dealers buy the tattered notes and make profit off the black market.
So the video is loading too much, but you get what I'm talking about. This is how desperate Zimbabweans are, and this is how much they have. This is the contempt they have for their new currency. So they are preferring to repair notes like old clothes, getting, sewing notes instead of using their ZiG, which Mnangagwa continues to claim is backed by gold. And if it's backed by gold, really backed by gold, then it should be a powerful currency, because not many currencies in the world are backed by anything really. But this one they are saying is backed by gold. But the people are not having it. The people, and understandably so, are still preferring on using the US dollar in place of the ZiG. So what I believe is, if the ZiG really manages to stay for a year, there's nothing they can do right now with the people. They can't convince the people to use it. I would not be, if I was Zimbabwean, I would not be convinced to use the ZiG. Otherwise, I might sell, as a trader, I might sell my goods worth millions, and the currency fails and I lose millions at the end of the day. So if the Zimbabwean ZiG maybe stays for the market for the next 1 year, then people might start having confidence in it, you know. People might start seeing that this is unlike the other six currencies that we've seen in the last 15 years. What I mean is between 2010 and now, Zimbabwe has had six different national currencies. So you now understand why there's so much mistrust for the ZiG. And the other thing, Zimbabwe is a very corrupt country. So even when we talk about the currency being backed, it might not even be backed by anything, which is not even an issue. But they might also embezzle the country dry. So I understand why this is happening. It has reached a point where law enforcement agents are arresting street currency dealers. That is, for example, the ones that I showed you in the video, the ones that are on the video, they are getting arrested right now in Zimbabwe because the government is trying as hard as it can to make the ZiG the only usable currency in Zimbabwe, and it is not still working. So they're even arresting street currency dealers, in a bid to make the ZiG the only available currency. But Zimbabweans are not having it. So there is an ongoing crackdown where they are looking for those people who are still supplying dollars to the market. The government has allowed businesses such as gas stations to refuse to accept the ZiG. So that is the irony. The irony is the government is banning small traders from using any other currency that is not the ZiG, and it has even announced a fine of up to 20,000 zigs. So you're getting fined in the currency that you don't want to take. So if they find you not accepting the zig, they are going to fine you 20,000 zigs if you do not accept the zig. So that is what they have announced as a fine. If you do not accept the zig, you get fined 20,000 zigs. So you have to look for zigs to pay the fine. However, the irony is the same government has allowed other businesses, some businesses such as gas stations, to refuse to accept the ZiG in favor of the US dollar. So you wonder, why are they selective in who they are allowing to use the ZiG and the US dollar? So that is the government trying to push a currency down its people's throats, but the people are not having it. So there is a confusion going on where, for example, landlords are asking for rent in dollars, while the government has banned the circulation of dollars in the economy. No new dollars are being, so people are now in a fix because your landlord is requesting for rent in dollars. You have zigs, the landlord is not taking zigs, but your employer paid you with zigs. So what you have now is a useless currency, because a currency is just but a piece of paper. It's the value that it represents that is important. So now people are having pieces of paper that are not acceptable, because one of the conditions of currencies is it has to be acceptable by all the parties involved. If I'm selling you and if I'm buying from you, or I'm selling you something, then we both have to agree that this paper is worth $10,000. If we don't agree that this paper is worth $10,000, then we can't trade, because currency is just but a measure of value. So I understand the fix that the people of Zimbabwe are going through. You work, you paid in zigs, you go to your landlord, he tells you he wants to be paid in dollars. There are no dollars in the market, so you have pieces of money, not pieces of paper, that you cannot use anywhere, because apparently gas stations are not taking zigs, small business people are not taking zigs, nobody is taking zigs. But if you get paid by a zig, that means you will be having pieces of paper with no value. So that is what is happening in Zimbabwe, with public mistrust of the new currency, bringing on a risk of it failing like the other six. They might launch a seventh one soon if they do not address that. But I don't know how they are going to address that. I've told you they have even tried bringing in musicians to sing for the Zig, and the musicians Zig Marley sang for the Zig just to make it popular among the people, but the people are not having it. Of course, nobody will want to joke with their business. not gonna give you goods worth money and you give me zigs that I'm not sure are gonna be valuable in the next 1 year. So it's a tough place to be for Zimbabwean economists, for the Zimbabwean government, and for the Zimbabwean people, because they have to. The currency has to stick around, because again, using the US dollar is not using the US dollar in an African country is not really the best thing to do, because you not having a currency, I mean, there's no way you're developing when you can't even have a currency. You don't even have a national currency. How then can we talk about you developing with what? With a borrowed currency? Your GDP is going to be really low, because you I don't so Zimbabwe really needs to, if the government should try and find a way to make this zig stand stick for about a year, then little by little I know people will start having trust in it, because the mistrust is their fault for having 6 failed currencies. Of course, I'm not gonna trust the 7th one. So that is Zimbabwe and what was happening there with the zig being at a risk of failing again. In Sudan, things are not looking good. Sudan has been in war over the past couple of years, but things have escalated over the past couple of weeks, with fighting in El Fashar, that is a provincial capital of North Darfur, seeing more than 120 people dead and more than 1,000 others injured over the past 2 weeks. I'm just talking about the past 2 weeks. We've seen 120 people reported dead. And in war, the people who die and are not reported are the ones who exceed the ones that are reported, because who's even reporting the deaths when you yourself are trying to survive? If your neighbor dies, is the first thing you think about going to report, or is the first thing you think about fleeing? So the ones that have been reported are 120. So you can conclude, you can, and rightly so, that the number might be higher than that. So Sudan is going through a tough time, with clashes between the military and the paramilitary rapid support forces. So there has been a war going on between the Sudanese military and another paramilitary called the Rapid Support Forces, and they have escalated over the last couple of weeks, and the conflict began, if I can remember, it began last year, April. So it's about a year-old conflict. That was when, if you can remember, it started in April last year, when military leaders and the paramilitary ones got into an altercation in the capital, Khartoum. That was when America was evacuating its staff. So, but up to now, the conflict has killed about 14,000 people and wounded. If it has killed 14,000 people, imagine the number of people it has wounded. So 14,000 people are the ones who have been reported dead so far from a year of war in Sudan. Remember, Sudan is also going through another problem. It is facing famine. Why? Because one, Sudan is a dry area, so it's for the farming to take place there, they need a lot of irrigation. You need a lot of investment in agriculture. Two, in the middle of war, are you going to farm or are you going to try and stay alive? So in Sudan, they are going through a really tough period. If you're not killed in war, then you die of famine, because there is no food. Nobody is farming. How are you going to farm when 14,000 people have died over the past 1 year, 132, 123 killed over the past 2 weeks, 1,000 injured over the past 2 weeks? You're more worried about not dying than actually being productive. That is why war destroys everything. So the clashes have especially escalated over the past couple of weeks, with some being reported on Thursday, where more people were killed. So that is Sudan going through the same thing. Nigeria is going through the same thing. DRC is going through the same thing. Central African Republic is going through the same thing. Somalia is going through the same thing. Burundi is going through the same thing. If you find a similarity in all those countries that I've mentioned, it is they are very mineral rich. Sudan is perhaps the oil well of Africa. It is really oil rich, really rich in oil. Sudan has a lot of oil wells, and part of the wars are because of that. Uh, Majorly because of that, even the fighting groups admit that they are fighting over control of oil wells. So that is Sudan, where over 100 people have been killed in the last 2 weeks as fightings escalate. In New Guinea, more deaths, and this time even worse, where 2,000 people. I don't think people understand how much 2,000 people is a lot of people to be. So in New Guinea, 2,000 people were buried by landslides. So, and you know what the New Guinea government did? The New Guinea government reached out to the United Nations asking for help in rescuing at least the over 2,000 individuals that have been buried in a landslide that happened on Friday. Up to now, the UN, which was approached for help by the New Guinea government, is estimating about 670 fatalities. Fatalities so far, about 670 deaths from the disaster. So that leaves 1,400 people unaccounted for. So there might be survivors here and there, but me and you both know that the number of deaths is going to be more than the number of survivors. So that is New Guinea. The government saying that it does not have the capability and the capacity to undertake rescue operations, so it's asking the UN to help in the same. And as I said, the UN has already estimated 670 deaths. So that is the UN. On better news, and I think I had Keith. How are you doing, Keith?
What is the UN? The UN is a criminal organization set up by the small hats to usher in this new world order. That's what the UN is. First was the League of Nations, then became the UN. Because at first everybody rejected it
Mm-hmm.
after World War One. They came back and they started another war called World War Two, and then of course everybody joined that shit now. And in Africa, it's done nothing but rob, steal, rape, kill. UN,
Mm-hmm.
small
So
hat organization.
that is the same organization. New Guinea is asking for help from to
They don't know.
rescue
Yeah, they don't know
buried
no
in
better.
landslide because they don't have the capability to. They have never invested in
Nah,
emergency response, and now they
no, they
don't
never.
know what to do with 2,000 people buried.
Yeah, they know what to do because they're morons. That's what it is. You don't ever grow
Yeah.
up. Help me. Why have you haven't developed any services yourself? So we're talking about New Guinea or Papua New Guinea? Which part of the island are we talking about?
I'm talking about Papua New Guinea.
Okay, I think Papua, because one of them is still controlled, and Papua is still the one with all the damn people over there still eating each other and fucking around doing crazy shit. I can't remember which one it is, but um, so maybe it's possible it's that one. I'm not sure, but yeah.
It's Papua New Guinea, but it reflects how most African countries really do not have any emergency response. Any emergency response, they do not have any
No,
emergency preparedness. It's the
no,
same
because
thing. Let's leave
they
New
ne-
Guinea
they never
alone. If the
they
same thing
never allowed.
happened in Ghana, happened in Uganda, then it would
Yeah,
still
they
be the
never.
same. They would not know
Yeah,
what to do with
they heard
2,000
me.
people buried.
Africans have not been allowed to grow up anymore as adults. They got child child minds controlling government. Africans have not been allowed to grow up. The white supremacists call what's called infantilization when they make you into a permanent child. So
Mhm.
permanent children don't plan anymore for disasters and real shit to happen to your children. So you see a grown mind when you look at TV and see these leaders, but and mentally they're children. White supremacy infantilizes and suppressed.
Mhm.
So it never allows them to grow up and take control of any system because then that's a threat to white power. So that's what happened. Before they had the UN, before they got talking about white people, I'm sure they had methods because things happen, disasters happen. I'm sure they had methods to help them and the people. But as you got conquered by white people, the generations become children, so they don't know how to act as adults and put things in motion to handle situations that come across uh, yearly or bi-yearly. That's what you see. Sponsors saying, "Oh, God happened,
Yep.
shit happened. Nobody know what to do." It's crazy.
Yeah, nobody will. The disaster preparedness is. You saw that in the Kenyan floods. You saw that with the DRC. You saw that with the floods in Tanzania. You've seen that in the Papua New Guinea landslides. You see that everywhere in Africa. The disaster. They do not prepare for anything. We just live. If something happens, we do not know what we're supposed to even do. So,
Yeah.
but in
Oh
better
well.
news, at least, yeah, at least in Burkina Faso, better things are happening in that region, in the Sahel region, because Burkina Faso's ruling government extended its transition term by 5 years. That is, Traore is going to be the president for the next
Hmm.
5 years, and apart from that, he's not going to be the president; he's going to be the military leader. Apart from that,
Yeah.
he will
European.
be eligible
Yeah.
to
The
vie
European
at the
the
5 years.
Europeans want them out, but the people don't. The Europeans are like, "Well, you do your democracy, do your voting, do this." No, people want them in there. People don't. The Europeans don't want them in there because he's actually doing for African people. And what the other Africans see is there's a problem on the continent.
So he is not the one who made the decision. It was a national consultation dialogue that took place
Of
on Saturday,
course,
May 20,
yeah,
in the
they want them
capital
there.
Ouagadougou, and they agreed that he's gonna be the military leader for the next 5 years, and apart from that, he will be eligible to vie to become the new president after the 5 years have passed. This comes a few weeks after he refused to take a presidential salary. One, he said that he does not need a presidential salary. He is okay with the army salary that he's getting at the minute. So they wanted to give him the presidential salary. He refused. Two, he deducted salaries for all politicians by 30%. If you're a politician in Burkina Faso, your salary goes down by 30%. And if you're a worker in Burkina Faso, your salary goes up by 50%.
Because the Europeans don't like that shit. Mm-mm. So
So
that Africa can actually
Mhm.
work for good leadership. Now you're supposed to not have ever have good leadership, and even know what it looks like. That's the threat. That's the threat to the stealing that's going on in the Sudan, in Congo, and everywhere else. That's a threat to their power. They must have Africa all fucked up, backwards, and puppets up in there. Well, they're gonna keep trying to kill his ass too.
So that will now see the duration of the transition was fixed at 60 months. So it's gonna be the transitional leader for the next 60 months. And funny enough, Mali was also having a similar dialogue, a
Of
national
course.
dialogue, find the way forward. And they also recommended that the junta rule extend its stay. So also in Mali, the ruling military will continue ruling because that is what the National Dialogue Committee agreed. After that is listening to the people. So in Burkina Faso, Traore is going to be the president. They're not going to have an election up to until 2029. So that is Burkina Faso becoming developed for the
Every
next five
that's
years.
it.
And
That's if he makes it. They're gonna be trying to put a bullet in his head. Don't think the assassinations are gonna stop. They're gonna
Mhm.
intensify. They're gonna use some Negro puppet that they got in there. Do you want to be the president to have money? Yes, I do. Okay, we'll form a coup against this nigga. Okay, master. We'll have it over and over again.
And in Mali, they are not even joking with anybody. For example, in Mali, they jailed a professor for criticizing the junta. So there is a professor, a 41-year-old academician who was a big critic of the Mali ruling military, and they jailed him. They told him, go make noise in prison.
All right, there we
So
go.
he was charged with defamation and damaging the state's reputation. So those are the two charges that he was. One, defamation. Two, you are damaging the state's reputation.
Now you know he's paid by the West. All these
Mhm.
professors you got in Africa are all Western trained. They're not trying any Afrocentric education. It's all
Mhm.
Western bullshit. The PhDs in Africa are fucking worthless. Worthless. All of them. Put them in a goddamn
Mhm.
big ass boulder and throw them up a cliff.
So that was everything that was happening in Africa. One, Zimbabwe's currency is failing again. Why? Because nobody is trusting it. It is the sixth national currency in 15 years. That is between 2010 and 2024. Zimbabwe has had six different currencies.
It's failing already.
No, it's not down, but nobody is accepting it. So it has reached a point
Wow.
where the government is now forcing the people to use it by force. They have uh, banned the circulation of the dollar. They are not really banned, but they've made it very difficult for you to find a dollar. So you have to use the ZIG, but nobody is accepting the ZIG. So Zimbabweans were complaining that the government is paying them in ZIGs, but the landlords are requesting for rent in dollars. So you have ZIGs, but you're
Wow.
getting kicked out of your house. You can't even buy anything from the stores or from the gas stations because they're not taking ZIGs. But
And
the government is paying people in.
we know these Africans in Zimbabwe don't own shit. Probably the Indians, the white people, and the other
Yep.
foreigners that own all these goddamn properties, and they're willingly trying to destabilize the government. So first thing I would have did, all you white people in there, you own absolutely nothing in the country. So you got to be brutal with that ass. You got to be
But
brutal because
I
they're gonna
personally
undermine what you're doing.
I personally
Uh-huh.
understand. I personally understand Zimbabweans. I would also not accept the ZIG if I was a Zimbabwean trader
You'd have no choice.
because this is no. I wouldn't. I would act like the others are acting because we're talking about the sixth currency since 2010. That is a
I don't,
currency every 2 years.
I don't give a shit. So isn't that currency now
You are
backed
a
by gold?
trader. They said it's
Isn't that
backed by gold.
so? There we go. So it's real currency. It's not the fake dollar. The dollar's not backed by nothing anymore. So why should the dollar be worth
Mhm.
more than something that's actually backed by something real? Okay? Why should the
But
dollar be worth
we're
more?
talking about
It's back.
One of the most corrupt countries in Africa, kid. One, two,
Oh,
you are a
most
trader.
corrupt.
Yeah,
Oh, Africa's
it's
corrupt. We're talking about one of the worst
yeah.
corrupt countries.
I've said one of the most corrupt. You know, even in the middle of corruption, Zimbabwe leads the other corrupt ones. It is a very corrupt country, and it is very corrupt. So, kids, if you are in Zimbabwe, you are a trader, you have goods worth, let's say, $1,000. You sell the goods worth $1,000 for zigs. I don't know, 1,000 zigs. Then it fails. That's you losing $1,000 with your zigs.
We are real
As
calm.
a trader, I would not accept it. I would watch it first, see if it's gonna really work or is it going to be the seventh failed currency in 15
Currency only
years.
works. Only currency only works the more
Mhm.
and people have confidence in it. People have confidence in the U.S. dollar. I don't know why it's garbage. It's
Mhm.
not worth anything really because they think of America. Oh, look, Lord, America's dollar is backed by nothing. It's worthless. It's printed paper from nothing. It's actually worthless.
Mhm.
But people believe it's worth something. So until you change the minds of the Zimbabweans, it's about confidence in the currency. That's all currency is,
Yeah,
confidence.
because for an uneducated and a not so educated Zimbabwean who owns a
That's
small
true.
business, they do not
That's
understand
true.
anything about currency being backed by anything. All they care is that they have money that they can use to buy something next year. They just want a currency that they know will be functional in 2025. They don't really know about the backing. They just want a currency they can trust.
Then what are we supposed?
And the
Then what are
Zig,
we supposed to do, Demore?
yep,
What are we supposed to do? Keep being slaves to the Americans who put sanctions on us? What are we supposed to do? What's the solution?
I think
What's the,
if I was if I was Amazon Mnangagwa, I would force this currency on them for the next 1 year, fully force them,
there,
because
there
I
you go.
know with time they are gonna get the confidence. But right now they don't. The government had to pay. The government even paid a musician, Zig Mali, to sing about the Zig. They paid $2,000 to a musician so that he can sing about the Zigs, just to boost the confidence in working, not even in songs.
Yeah, got it. What you got to
So,
do? You got to force it on the people. But
yep.
if it's a currency that's going to actually be reliable, not based on. See, the last currency they had was based on nothing. They tried to make print dollars and shit, Zimbabwean currency
Mhm.
for nothing. This time it's actually backed by something real gold. So if you if it's not a scam and you're actually backing by an amount of gold, depending on what note you're working with, backed by this amount
Mhm.
of gold, then eventually it'll work. But you must gain confidence. So you got to force it. You got no choice. Girl. You
And
can't
it's not
stay.
even hard, Keith, because you don't even have to target the small business traders. Just go for the big farms in Zimbabwe. Make sure they all use the dollar. They all use the Zimbabwean gold. That is the Zig. That will trickle down, for those small businesses, wherever they get their stock from. If the manufacturers are using the Zig, then even the small traders will be forced to use the Zig in order to buy from the big corporations. So
Yeah, so,
make
and,
pay everybody using the Zig,
and you got to have
force
confidence.
the
So imagine,
major corporations.
imagine when Gaddafi was making his own currency called the gold dinar, and he
Mhm,
went for all Africa.
mhm.
It was a new currency. They had to kill him because it was going to work. They didn't have confidence in that currency because it's backed by gold. So that's what Zimbabwe's trying to do. But
Yep.
Zimbabwe's, like you said, corrupt. You got to gain confidence in the currency it's got to be a real currency. Okay, can't be no corrupt
Yep.
smoke and mirrors nonsense. It's got to be real. So, and you got to as people use it, they'll gain confidence. You got to force them to use it.
So that was everything that was happening in Africa today and over the weekend. I won't be here tomorrow. I'll be attending something, so I won't be here tomorrow. I guess I'll see you next time on the updates. I hope you
And you back.
enjoy the rest
You
of.
back Thursday.
Yeah, probably on Thursday.
Yeah. So
So
tomorrow's got to
I
go.
hope you enjoy.
Tomorrow's got to go bury his great 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 cousin. He don't know.
Nah, nah, nah. It's not that far. It's a very close cousin to my mom, so I have to take her there. So I
All
hope you enjoy the. Yeah, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Jiba Jaba, who was with me, asking me, did Ruto decline his salary? Come on, Jiba.
Not only did he
I hope
not
you
re-
enjoy the rest of.
and not only did he not decline it, this no good bastard still more money going on trips around the world.